Hey, welcome back to Jerry's Live. You might have caught us last week or caught in the website somewhere in there on Facebook between last Tuesday and this Tuesday, where we did a teaser broadcast for our new Jerry's Live on Facebook. This week we are coming to you at 5:30 instead of 3 like last week. We asked, lots of people gave us some feedback, and we decided that we will be broadcasting Tuesdays at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time, just to make it easier for everybody to kind of check in with us. Now, if this isn't a good time for you, that's fine. This is going to be up. We're going to leave them up so you can check in with us anytime. Even if you're not watching it live, please go ahead and feel free to leave us feedback. We'll actually be checking comments pretty much constantly, just see what people have to say to make sure we answer questions from viewers. So it's not a done deal if you can't actually be with us at the regular 5:30 time that we've chosen. If you, as you're following along with us today, we're going to be talking about Turner Acryl Gouache. If you're curious about any of the products that we're using, you can go to our website, jerrysartarama.com, and type in the search bar, JL1. That'll bring up the cart that's got all of the products that we're actually going to use when we do our demo portion with pouring painting. So if you're not sure what a color is that you see that you like, if you're not sure kind of what panel we're using and you want to potentially look at those to see what those are about, that'll give you all the information on those. So again, the search keyword is JL1. And then also, if you, after the show, are curious about what upcoming episodes that you can RSVP to be able to be reminded that they're coming up, the keyword for that would be Jerry's Live, and that'll come in. So, and also they're going to be adding links below for you so that you'll be able to see that and just click on it without having to run off to the website and do that. So, so anyway, again, I am Amy Gardner-Dean, or if you missed me last week, you've got me this week. So, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I caught a bit of the flu over the weekend. If I'm coughing a lot, we may resort to a cough drop, but we'll see how that goes. So, so Turner Acryl Gouache, that's the brand we're going to talk about today. But more importantly, what is acrylic gouache? Heck, I mean, what is gouache? A lot of people don't know. And to be honest, it's kind of a very mysterious amalgamy. Gouache, basically the word gouache means matte. If you hear gouache, whether it's watercolor, whether it's acrylic, you're going to want to assume that, for the most part, we'll explain what that can happen where there's a few instances that it's not, but for the most part, it's going to be a matte finish. That means, if you can see on this, there's no shine in this area around here. Now the rest of it there is, because I kind of not a big lover of matte. I like a satin finish for final artwork, but I went ahead and painted on here so you can see the difference. It's very smooth, very velvety, the product. Turner Acrylic Gouache is made by Turner Colorworks in Japan. They are a fine art acrylic gouache. When you talk about acrylic gouache versus watercolor gouache, watercolor is basically just a matte watercolor gouache, okay? So you can actually do all the techniques that you would with watercolor. It's just going to be that your artwork turns out very flat, very matte, very velvety. For those of you who are older, unlike some of my team here that are much younger, you may remember design gouache back in the day. If you had any lettering, any design classes, it was always done with design gouache, which was a matte watercolor, so that when you reproduce your design work with photography, it's not going to get any glare from the lights. It's going to be a nice, crisp registration. So with acrylic gouache, the difference is you've got an acrylic polymer emulsion mixed in with your pigment. With Turner, where it's becoming matte, because polymer emulsions got shine to it, right? What they're doing is they're putting so much pigment per the acrylic emulsion that actually there's a higher percentage of pigment, so it's going to give this really rich, really nice, velvety look to your paint when you put it down. Also, because it doesn't have as much resin in it, it's going to dry quicker, a lot quicker than your regular acrylics are. That's actually great if you're working under a deadline. It's great if you do a lot of design work, if you want to layer colors. That's the one thing that's going to be harder with your watercolor gouache, is that layering colors, you will actually, because it's like watercolor, you can actually pull color back up, which you're not going to be able to do with this unless you're really scrubbing, because it's water resistant, not waterproof. The reason is because it doesn't have as much of that polymer emulsion in it. So the higher the content of polymer emulsion, the less likely you're going to be able to pick it up, because it's going to dry smooth and protect that pigment. So, so that's what the difference is. Now, the great thing about this is really rich. For the most part, the colors are opaque. The biggest issue with your acrylic gouache, because it's got that low emulsion content versus pigment, you have to be really careful what you're putting this on as far as flexibility. The more flexible a material, unless it's like a raw, untreated fabric, the more likely you can have a little bit of cracking. If you're putting it on something that's got, like for instance, this was done under the gun. Since Turner is so bright and so vivid, I chose this to advertise one of our panels that we sell. I wanted really bright color pop. I wanted it to be instant out of the tube. I didn't want to have to mix anything. And so this did the job for that. But if you can see at all in the actual dark here, I don't know if it needs to be zoomed in on possibly to see. You can actually see a little bit of cracking, a little bit of fissures with it. That's because this is canvas. So anytime there is any swelling, anytime there is, any drying, any time that canvas is going to move and flex, you're going to have an issue where, because this is a very rigid material when it's dry, there can be cracking, okay? Ways around this are to paint on a canvas panel. Paint on wood panels, paint on wood. They actually make a wood, glass, and metal primer, so you can actually paint on all those things. So it gives you the ability with this great fine art product to actually be able to use it in other applications that maybe are more for design, that are great for mixed media, that are great for a lot of other things, for maybe really pushing the envelope with your fine art that you can't do with a lot of other paints. So, and in a matte finish, because what it's kind of sells me on acrylic gouache is, if you've got acrylics and you're using a matting medium, what you're adding to your actual acrylics in a matting media is a lot of silica. Now, silica is a really fine ground up powder, but what it's going to do is, even though it gives that matte finish, it does add some haze into it. So you lose a lot of the color punch, a lot of the color vibrancy with traditional acrylics when you use matting medium, that you don't lose with your acrylic gouache. So that's why it's a really awesome thing. When you're mixing acrylic gouache, it's very concentrated. So what you're going to want to do is 2 parts paint to 1 part water, so that it's nice and smooth. Now, you could use acrylic gouache if you wanted to paint thick. You would have to add an acrylic medium in it, so you'd have to up that resin count in your paint. So when you're doing that, that's going to actually lose some of the opacity. So just something to consider. You can't actually paint impasto with this, but your paint is going to become more transparent with the more of that you add. So, so it's not a do or die that you can't paint thick with it, but you just have to, use some common sense with it. So I'm just checking my notes, because after having a fever for 3 days, I'm a little here and there. With the Turner Acrylic Gouache, it's got the highest light fastness ratings of pretty much any acrylics that are out there, other than colors that have the fluorescence in it. Now, some of those aren't tested for long enough, so they don't know what the light fastness ratings are going to be on them, and then some of them they just know, especially if it's a straight fluorescent color, that light fastness isn't going to last for very long. So that's something that on our website, when you're looking at the individual colors in the open stock, if you're looking at the website, off to the right, there's a little tech notes box that's kind of looks like a little yellow sticky note. And if you click on that, it'll give you the pigment numbers that the paint's made out of, and it'll also tell you if there's fluorescent pigments in that or not. So if you're using this for really fine art applications, that's going to allow you to make the best buying choice so that you don't add fluorescents in if you've got concerns about light fastness. Also, for people with a design background, it's something that slipped my mind a few minutes ago when we were talking. The Munsell color system, they are very fastidious about putting where their paints fall in the Munsell color system. So if you learned color theory under that system, you'll be pleased to know that's actually in the tech notes as well on the colors. So you can pull that up, you see where that color falls, you know where that color will mix and match. And in a later episode, we'll try to talk about one of the smart sets that Turner has. Turner has this great 12 color smart set with a little palette box and a palette cleaner and all this really fun stuff in it that actually has, for those 12 colors, it's got a color mixing guide that comes with it that you can pick any of 120 colors, and from that little tiny set of 12, you can make any of those colors on there. So that's just a really cool thing, especially if you're learning color mixing, that gives you a lot of really added bonuses and kind of how to figure color out. So anyway, so Turner Acryl Gouache has this ridiculous range of what had been 219 colors, now is 236 colors. And it's not just regular colors. There's lame, which is kind of a sparkling glitter that you can add. There's pearl colors, there's fluorescence, there's iridescence, interference type of colors. So we're going to take a quick look at some of the color families that Turner has. We've got some artwork examples of pretty much, I think, one of each of them. So first we'll give you a couple of, I've got, I think, one example of, well, I've got a couple examples of one back here. We've got, this actually is got some of everything in it. It's got some of the lame. You can see a very light sparkle. With the lame, you can put as much as you want in there to get it really glittery. You can put as little as you want. So just in a few spots, you can see how that lame has kind of touched it up. This is a mixed media work on a wood panel that's got paper glued to it. It's got some Swarovski crystals. It's got an iridescent over a dark blue, which I believe is one of the Japanesque blues that I really liked, that was very natural. And then it's got more, you can see where I've built up the lame more, so it kind of looks like a little solar system here. There's a little bit of metallics peeking through. So that's a good example of a bunch of different lines used together. Our skeleton fellow here is displaying what's one of the metallic lines. This is not the Japanesque. We'll talk more about the difference between the Japanesque and the regular ones in just a moment. But that's done with just the metallic colors that Turner has. It's done on really stiff watercolor paper. It was a great surface for that, so it absorbed in really nice and looked very clean. It is outlined with the jet black, just so it would be a nice sharp contrast. Now, don't hate me, this is very bright, but here is the fluorescent line. This is on raw fabric, so this hasn't been primed, so you're not going to have the cracking and stuff with it. But this is all of the fluorescent colors on a tea towel. This is actually from a shirt that one of my friends gave me one time that was hilarious, because I was always being told this because I got off track very easily, as you may be able to tell at this point. So that's the fluorescence, and this will glow in the dark, so it's something that you can use for, you know, shirts for parties or things like that. Then here is one of the lines that's called the pearl line. It's actually, I think, the luminescent colors. I'm going to try to turn it so you can see the color change. And it goes down as one color, but it picks up another color, kind of like an interference color on like a classic car at the car shows. Are you able to see that? Turn it straight. Okay. Okay. Katie's letting me know, just kind of to be able to see that. So it's very delicate. Now this isn't just one coat straight out of the tube. I think I put 3 coats to make sure it would be really nice and shiny, but that's done on watercolor paper, and this has been done actually for several years. It held up really well. This is done with just the regular colors. They've got so many just regular colors. Just even with all those, you can get some nice, bright, pretty colors out of it. You can do some very nice, tight technical work. So that's that. Now, when we talked and I said that, you know, that it was a lot drier and it was going to be matte, it's not always the case, which you might have been able to see from the metallic. This is actually the metallic colors on canvas to try. Now, the metallic colors and the lame colors to have enough depth where it's going to give you kind of that color pop where those flakes are going to be suspended enough to catch the light to bounce that metallic look and color back to you. It's going to have a higher acrylic emulsion count in it. So it's going to be safe to be able to put on canvas. This is just on a little canvas. You can see even with me pushing on it, there's no cracking or issues with that. So the metallic and the lame line have that excess acrylic in it. And then the pearl actually probably pretty much does as well. This is on a linen panel. This is their pearl line, so everything's got kind of that nice sheen and brightness to it. So that's actually a line that seems very, very popular. So that's the pearl. Now the lame has that metallic look. This is obviously, as we're looking at this painting back here, this obviously has heavier coats of this on. I was trying to see if you built it up exactly how bright you could get it. You can see some of the blues in here, some of the silver. There's like I think a white. So that gives you an idea of what the lame can look like, where you can add it to other colors and get some nice results from it. This is the pastels. It's very bright and very cheerful, and some artists will use that for highlights for other colors, just to kind of, rather than a white, to make it pop. I just used all the pastels with this just to give kind of a nice, like, Eastery picture with the rabbit and the, because I guess that's what pastels is to me, is Easter. This is the Japanesque line. Now this, because it's so light, are you getting a decent shot with that? Okay. Does that help at all? Okay, perfect. All right. Now the Japanesque line has a very good range of colors in it. What the difference is between that and the regular line is the pigments are made with a little bit grittier powder than the regular paint, so that it's more natural. It's a more traditional kind of Japanese pigment. It's designed after traditional Japanese colors, where they're actually the colors more of nature rather than the synthetic man-made colors. So it gives your work just a very slight texture that's very pretty, that's very natural. All the colors blend really nicely together. So it's a line where, especially if you do landscape painting or maybe even try portrait painting in it, things like that, it would work really nicely. So that's the Japanesque. This is actually one that was just, we were trying it on wood to see if we even needed to use primer. And just the beauty of this is you can see how rich that matte look is to the artwork when you don't put any varnish on it at all. So that's just this color straight from the tube with that. Now this is their gray value colors, or their grayish colors. I did add a little bit of white, and I did add a little bit of the jet black just to give it a little bit of edge for sharpening it. But that's all 6 colors of the grayish line all put together on a little panel. So that's, it was actually kind of nice to play with. It's good for mixing. If you just want to gray some colors down, you can use a color from that family to be able to gray it down with. And then I just brought a couple other items that kind of show you what you can do. This was actually done with all Japanesque. I really liked how natural the colors were. I even painted the inside of the box colors that I thought matched the little elephants well. They do have their own metallic with the Japanesque line, their own metallics. They're with that little bit more texture, so it gives a little bit of kind of a neat natural look to it. So that's done all with Japanesque. And then this was just an experiment to see if we could get it to paint on acrylic tiles. And what that is it's done on 5 different layers. Now they are gone over with just a satin varnish, so it would help with the depth of that artwork and make it pop. Looks like I got it kind of off kilter. There we go. So that's done with that. So you can get some really nice technical work with the acrylic gouache. It would be really great for illustrators. It'd be great for medical illustrators. For anybody that does very tight technical rendering, because it gives you good control. So now what we're going to do is not have my cough drop sitting where people can see it. We're going to take just a little bit of the jet black so you can see, and I'm just going to paint a little over this so you can see the color pop. Now, I did put this purple on here for a reason, and that's so that you could see what I'm talking about with this is the violet. With this one, this part right here is done with their mixing colors. They've got a mixing magenta, a mixing violet, and a mixing white. The mixing white is a little bit more translucent, so it gives you really nice mixing colors. Colors that it's added to, it gives them this really nice richness as it lightens them up. So those are with the mixing colors, but then, and they don't have any fluorescence, so they're not going to alter your colors in any way when you use them to mix. The one with them, this is the same violet, but this is their regular violet, not their mixing violet. This does have a little bit of fluorescent in the color, and you can see that it's really got this electricity to it with that little bit of fluorescent gives as a pop. So that's why I was saying good to check those tech notes just to look at it to make sure that if you want the fluorescent in it for kind of the zing, you'll know it's there. If you don't, you'll know to avoid it. So we're going to paint just a little bit of black over that. We're not going to be very scientific about this. We're not going to... But we'll do this and then you can see what how nice the richness is of this. And you'll also be able to see dry time then. And we'll set it aside and come back to it if we need to. Now the texture that was there was actually not done with the acrylic gouache. It was actually done with some acrylic mediums under it originally. I just didn't like where it was going when I stuck it on there, so it's been kind of reduced to just playing around. And that's something that's a good tip that that just when I teach students, I pop in with little bits of information as I'm going along. This was actually done just as practice for fun to show what the mixing colors were on a non-archival canvas panel. Well, that's all well and good and fine and fun until you do a piece that you really like this one, and then it's not archival. So so it becomes something where you've kind of got this little bit of something really nice that you really liked that you didn't expect was going to kind of come out of something that was practice, and then you don't have the archival nature that you want to make it last. So so sometimes it's better to add a little bit more money when you're buying supplies to get stuff that's archival. You never know exactly what you're going to come up with that you really like, and then you won't be stuck with something that you're using as a demonstration piece like I am. So we will let that dry and we will come back to it. Now we will go ahead and start our, I'm just going to set this here and we'll pull it back out in a few minutes. We're going to start working on our pouring painting. Now this is one that I did just when we got these new panels in. It's the DaVinci liquid art panels, the Pro panels. They have a 1/8 inch lip around the outside. They're treated with a gesso that's specifically for liquid media, so it's going to bond really well. You can see how I used just kind of an amalgamy of different colors that Turner offers just to try it out. The reason I decided to use Turner with this wasn't even supposed to be about Turner originally, was because Turner's color in the pigment load is so high and it's so saturated, I barely had to use any of the tube to get really crazy bright results from it. And this was done over a year ago, and the fluorescent is, as much as they like to say that it's not light fast, it looks just like it did when I did it then. So that's really nice. So we're going to be using a DaVinci panel for this. Now we did have a comment about the pouring medium, and I understand that it's a little pricey sometimes when you're looking at it for the first thing, when you don't know what you're getting and you're buying for trying something out. The biggest issue with this is Liquitex has actually designed this where nobody else has been able to come up with this formula where it works really well. To get this kind of clarity in something that's poured, where you're not getting a haze that dries over it, where water molecules aren't being captured and stuck in there, where it starts looking very filmy and very cloudy, apparently takes quite some engineering, and they're the ones that have actually been able to come up with this thus far. So it's something that only they have. Now, it's a professional quality product, and when that's the only thing that we've got to offer you as an example to be able to do a demo, that's what we're going to go with. And really, that's what we're going to go with anyway, for the most part, because the issue is when you're working with professional quality products, you have much less, your learning curve's much higher. You're not fighting your materials, especially when it comes to color mixing. It comes to varnishing, it comes to mediums especially. You're working with good quality materials right away, so when you're learning, you learn quickly, you retain the knowledge, and your artwork is such where, you know, like I was saying with this panel, it's useless now. I could have done something with it. So we're going to be working with professional quality products when we work with Facebook Live. So let's check this real quick. As you can see, we're getting close to being dry. You can see we're starting to get much more velvety and matte looking. It's very opaque. Going over that, I added a little too much water in a couple spots, but you know, obviously I would be working on the side and adding that, but just for expediency's sake. We'll check back in on this in just a minute. Now, if you've worked with acrylic, another thing to mention while I'm getting this set up, mist your paint. With these, you don't need to squirt out a bunch of paint like you do with acrylic where it's there and ready to work with. Only put out a little bit, as much as you need at a time. It's far better to keep it in the tube and save it and not have it out, because if you don't continue to spritz it as you work, it will dry up and then it's useless. It can't be re-wetted like watercolor can. With watercolor gouache you can do that, but not with your acrylic gouache. So use just as much as you need when you're working with that, and make sure that you mist it like you would with acrylics. So as you can see, this is what these panels look like. It's got a really nice lip to it that's nice and high, so that's going to give us a nice area to be able to pour into. Alright, I'm going to move these off to the side so I accidentally don't grab the wrong thing. Now, I've just got cups, and we're going to be putting, let's see, how many colors do we have? I might try putting a little bit of black in too. We'll set this over here. I'm just going to use pipettes for some of it. For some of it, I'm just going to pour straight out, but you can get these, you know, virtually anywhere. We don't sell them as of yet because this is, you know, just we're kind of getting into some of these types of things, but it's one that you can use for crafts or probably science. I think these are science ones, so. Oh, yes, I knock all that down. I'm just gonna lay this down so I can see what's what. Now, I'm going to be putting more of this in than I may need, because this ends up being an area that you'd be surprised how much it takes. And that's the thing about this pouring medium. It's fun to try, but the issue is that it's very it's addictive. So once you use it, if you try it, you're going to want to to probably do some other ones. Do we have a question, Mary?
Yeah, Amy. Emily actually has a question. She wants to know if epoxy is comparable to pouring medium. I was about to answer her in comments, but I think you might be able to elaborate a little bit better on the differences in the video.
Emily, with epoxy, I've done some work with epoxy and with actually alcohol inks before when we were testing these panels. Epoxy is going to, unless you've got the right formula with pouring, is going to pull away from your stuff and even crack as it dries. It is noxious and horrible, and I was doing it outside at a table that people sit on and eat at lunch, and everybody that came out, even to the smoking section, were complaining because it was just so vile. It was giving people headaches. If it had not drawn away from the sides, it would have been really cool, but it's not. It's something that you would really need to research blends and brands and find one that's not going to have that shrinkage issue. I'm sure that there's some out there, but it's just, and I don't know what it would do with this pigment. I'm sure that it would suspend it fine, but I don't know what the resin would do as far as eating the polymer. It could do all sorts of things. I do know that in trying glass paints will eat, if they're solvent-based, will eat polymer resin. So I would assume that epoxy potentially could do something very similar. So like I said, I don't think that would probably be, you would definitely want to research before trying, or even see if you could find somebody locally that does that type of work that could give you some tips just for safety, because it was pretty horrible. So, but thank you, Emily. That's actually a really good question. And the work that I've seen people do in epoxy is fantastic. It's just would be getting the knowledge and the safety information correct. So, all right. So we're just gonna start kind of dumping some stuff in here. I'm gonna mix up some different blends of this. You can see I didn't put in like a whole lot, and this is very pungent, I guess would be a good word for it. Looks like you should be able to smell this like onions. It's very, very, very bright. Let me just put some different ones in here. I'm using a pearl lemon and a pearl violet. It's a luminescent rose, which is basically your fluorescent pink. With some of these, I'm going to put a lot more pigment in because I want it to be a lot brighter, and with some of them, I want it to actually be somewhat translucent, whereas it dries, it'll kind of give you that depth down low. Are there any other questions while I'm mixing?
Well, we actually have a question on how the acrylic gouache will react to acetone or alcohol. Would you?
I don't know. That's actually a really interesting question. Without trying it, I don't know. I'm not sure. It'll paint on plastic. We did try it on plastic when we worked. We did a campaign that was paints on anything for Turner. And we did cell phone cases, and I mean, I did a pair of reading glasses. It works on glass, it works on ceramics, it works on all sorts of stuff. But I don't know with that. That would be something that you'd need to. That actually we just need to try. That's a good question, though.
Yeah. We
should write some. Well, maybe we can go back and look at some of these, and maybe even do a couple attempts ourselves and see.
Yeah.
To answer questions.
Oh, well, maybe some follow-ups.
Yes. Some follow-ups. Have more of this in that. I really like this bright green color. Are there any other questions?
Michelle also wanted to know, how are you making sure that you have a level surface so that you don't have pooling in certain areas of your panel? Once you've poured the medium, you can see really quickly if it starts going one way or the other.
at times when I did the other one, and I did another demonstration for our website for the liquid panels, we just tacked stuff up under it. You could just use pennies to kind of stick up under the corners if the panel's not too big. But it will shrink back just a slight bit, so just as long as, you know, it's relatively level and you don't have it going one way or the other, you'll see the color start to slide. It'll start to slide down, and then you'll know to, oh, quick, stop, shore it up. So, but that's actually a really good question. But yeah, pennies are just some little, like, you know, scrap pieces of paper or wood or something like that would work for kind of shoring up a corner or a side. Hopefully our table is level. Leave it to the viewers to come up with these things where it's like, oh yeah. Okay, you know, I've got to dump something on here because this is killing me to be mixing this stuff and see this. So we're going to dump a color on just to have a little bit of something on here. Now you can have, with this you can, you know, best laid plans, you could have a plan and try to accomplish it, and it's not going to, you know, be like painting the Mona Lisa, or you could have no plan and it's going to be just as fun. So I just say just give it a shot, see what happens. Now with the lame, I'm going to put a good bit in there so we can see the sparkle. Before I mix that up, I want to add something else. Easter must be on my mind because these colors are all very.
Which color is that again, Amy?
This is the color pearl. You can see the shimmering kind of in here. It's cool when you mix it with the pouring medium if you kind of leave it somewhat, you know, not crazy mixed, because you can get this really neat sheen that kind of pops here and there. For this part, I'm just going to pour, and a little bit I'm going to actually use these little pipettes to kind of plug some in. Let me stir this one just so I remember there's something in it, because the lame color is glittery, so you're not going to see it until it's actually down. Now the green color is permanent yellow green. It's not. It's just the traditional color. It's not. Doesn't have any specific finish to it. I'll put a little bit of the yellow in with the pipette so you can see in the green where you can see the pearl kind of swirl. I don't know if you can. Oh yeah, you can really see the shine there. That little bit of color. Oh wow, you can really see the glitter in this. Now the nice thing about the lame is that as it dries with this one, you can see the sparkles in it, and it makes it almost. This reminds me of egg drop soup a little bit. The way that it came and kind of blossomed up over the colors and swirled, so that's why I wanted to add a lame in there with it. Let's dump a little yellow, and then I think I have a gold too.
And then Amy,
yes.
Barb would like to know if she could substitute heavy body acrylic paint, or would acrylic gouache be the best paint to use for this project?
You can substitute it. The issue is going to be as you're mixing it, you've really got to do a lot more work with kind of mixing it into the color, just because you've got this pourable consistency and then you've got this really heavy body to it. I've already spilled it. That can sand back off since it's a natural wood. And you don't want to add like aerate this like a whole lot where you're constantly stirring, making a lot of bubbles, because the air bubbles will dry in this. You're going to have to kind of go back and be cognizant of where big ones are and actually pop them. So I would think that you're going to be adding a lot more air, mixing up something that's a much different consistency. So acrylic gouache would be good. You could even use fluid acrylics.
Oh, yeah.
Would work really nice. That would be an alternative that wouldn't give you the issues with, you know, mixing being kind of stressful. All right, so found my gold. I thought I had a gold. I'm gonna put a lot of gold in that one. Okay, you know what? That pink is just screaming to. I always feel like I'm gonna regret this when I go to put something like this on because it's just so bright. See, with the pipette you can kind of draw it on. Once I get all the colors on, I'll kind of plug it into wet spaces and then actually kind of push it up and through. Almost like an injection of color. I just don't want to, once I kind of get to that point, I can't use the pipette again. So, other than for mixing, so we're going to kind of wait. But you can see just how bright this luminescent color is. All right, where's our gold? And then the metallic colors are a little bit, they've got a little bit more acrylic resin in them, so they're going to be a little bit more shiny like the pearl and the, you'll see with the lame. I'm going to squirt some of this out without actually mixing it very well at first. So it'll be kind of streaky. Actually, let's do a little. And I think what we'll do tomorrow, since these change as they dry, they evolve into a completely different life of its own. As you leave it in the evening, you expect it to kind of look one way, and you come back and some colors have dropped away, some colors have kind of come up as it starts to dry and cure. So we'll try to put a couple shots on maybe tomorrow morning, and then maybe tomorrow at the end of the workday we can stick a couple shots up so people can see how it's kind of progressed. Now with that other one, I was very curious about, oh, that's nice gold. I was very curious about what would happen if I put kind of a clear coat on top of it of just the pouring medium. And that did take longer to dry doing just straight that than it did with the other pigment. So I think it'd just be better to varnish it than add another layer of pouring medium, but it was more kind of just a test to see what would happen since I'd never worked with it before. Another thing that I want to mention technically about the acryl gouache. Make sure, even if you like matte, that you still varnish your work. Always varnish your work. It just protects your work for no matter what, you know, I mean, obviously not watercolor, but that's under glass. But always varnish work. It keeps dust and just, you know, pollutants out that are just environmental, but it also keeps, in case the kids touch it when you're not looking, in case, you know, somebody gets too close, in case it gets dropped, it can protect it from being scratched. I would say if you want to varnish it with a matte varnish, by all means do so, but you may want to use a spray varnish because that's going to be thinner, lighter coats, and it's not going to have that silica in it like varnish is that's matte, that's acrylic, where it's going to maybe dull and cloud the work because this is so rich pigment-wise, you don't want it to dull your colors at all, so definitely kind of try to follow that by trying maybe a spray varnish instead for it. All right, I'm just going to dump a couple other. Are there any other questions that anybody's come up with while I'm...
Well, for those just joining the video, they wanted a reminder of the ratio that you're using of pouring medium and the acrylic gouache.
It just depends. It's not anything specific. Yeah, it's just until it gets to a point of where it's a color that I really like, where you know how bright it is. with the luminescent one, I did not have to add a whole lot, and it was right there. Oh, we haven't added the lame. Let's plug a little purple in here just to kind of fill. And like I said, you can get it on the sides. I mean, you can masking tape this off, which would have been a great idea, but I would sand it and probably stain it anyway, so I'm just leaving it natural, and if it gets anything on it, just wiping it off so it doesn't leave a lump. And as you can see, going along, it's leveling out at the edge. I am seeing a few air bubbles, but I'm going to just deal with that once I kind of am getting closer to the end of this, because some more are going to pop up, so there's no reason to waste the time dealing with it this second. Gosh, you put one color down and then you see a spot that looks like you need to kind of balance it out. Now, I don't know, I'm sure you can probably see with the gold how the metallic color is kind of coming up and swirling as we go along. Let's try adding just a little bit of this lame. It won't show up like initially right away, but you'll start seeing sparkles kind of float to the surface. To green, and I'm really surprised I'm not wearing more of this, because I usually am.
Kimmy was asking how they can sign their work after they're done.
Well, since it's acrylic, I mean, you could just take an acrylic based marker. You could paint it in acrylic over the top. I mean, you could do kind of whatever you want. I mean, it's not a set in stone kind of a thing. I would even consider, I don't know, because it's funny, the one that's over here I think actually may have two, oh no, before it had two wires on it, so it could be hung one way and the other, because I couldn't decide which one I liked best. So, you know, that's the nice thing about something like this, is you don't have to be limited to it being vertical or horizontal. You can kind of decide, or even, you know, be like, oh no, wait a second, I like it this way better. But yeah, anything that's acrylic can go on it. I mean, you could even sign it with you know, with oil, as long as it's over acrylic, just not the other way around. So we're almost, let me fill the last little bit. Can you see the lame showing through on the camera, Katie? Mm-hmm. The little bit of kind of the whites popping up with the sparkle.
You can
it's
see it
slowly starting to level up.
Yeah, it looks a little milky right now.
Okay, yeah, because what's going to happen is where it's milky, it's clear, and as that dries, it's going to, it'll pop up. Let me put...
I can see it. I can take the thing close and let them see real quick, and we'll go back. Don't mind me.
Okay, I'm going to start kind of pushing this into some areas and then just squirting color out so it's actually... You'll see, no matter trying to make it big or trying to make it small, it's gonna kind of do what it's gonna do. And then some of it's gonna come up, and then some of the color underneath is gonna come down, and it's making these really cool kind of almost like burnt oranges with the gold. Just let me know if I need to move out of your way.
You're fine.
We'll pop that one because that's annoying. Alright, what color do I? Let's put a little gold on there. Oh. I had black. I was thinking about doing black, but I think that's going to be just a little too dark to go with this. Are there any other questions, Mary? Put a little bit more lame in here because I want it to be. Still have some of this.
Well, Michelle did have a question of what colors work best with acrylic pouring medium, but I commented back saying that I haven't really noticed any issues with any colors, that maybe she should just work with colors that she likes best and that she's, you know, most attracted to.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's more about getting a nice balance of the colors that work well together, having a good eye for the kind of combinations, because although I will say that other one I picked colors that I thought it would not be very fun to do. I was just testing the panel initially, and so I wasn't that worried about creating something that I was either A, going to like, or B, think was fun. And I was very surprised, just kind of picked weird random colors that I had in my office, and then I liked it so much that I was like, actually not unhappy that I used the fluorescent. I don't like fluorescents. So I think it's just kind of picking colors that generally tend to look nice together.
Oh, and we've got several comments now asking about the drying time.
It's just like with regular acrylic paint, it's going to depend on different factors. It's going to depend on how humid the area is that you live in. It's going to depend on how thick you're actually making this. It's only 1/8 of an inch lip, so it shouldn't be too bad. It should, I would think, within 72 hours probably set up enough where you can actually move it. But, you know, that just depends. Obviously, if you're in Bermuda and there's a hurricane on, it's going to dry much slower than, you know, if you live in Arizona and it's 110 in the summer. So kind of, if you already work in acrylic, kind of use some common sense and, you know, figure the dry time out. I think my first coat was within 24 hours was dry, but that was a climate controlled office. So.
Right. And then going on with drying time, you mentioned bubbles earlier. Did you have to continue to check the piece and pop those bubbles as the drying time continued, or was it?
No, they pretty much kind of within the time that you're working are going to come up. Even if you miss a few, it's not that big of a deal. It's those the big ones are going to come up pretty quick, and you'll be able to address them pretty quickly. As I make some with coughing. Excuse me. All right. You can see a few of these. All right. Okay, so now we're just going to take the pipettes. I think we've got most of it covered here. And I'm just going to do some swirls as I kind of push the color into what's already there. Sorry. And when you do this, you'll be able to feel the bottom, be kind of conscientious of it. Don't dig it down in. because that can make tracks and that will give you air bubbles. So just kind of feel down there for where it is and kind of then push it along kind of gently. You can see right in there where I went a little too deep and pulled some air bubbles up. You can also take, if you've got pipettes, you can actually put them on the air bubble and then suck the air bubble back up too. That actually works pretty well. Add some pink. I feel like my cough medicine's stalling out. Yes, ma'am.
The pipettes that you're using, remind me, do we sell those on our website?
We don't. We do have some droppers.
Oh,
I'm not
right.
sure.
I'm gonna include those in the comments.
I'm sorry. I gotta drink back in. Take a minute. That's much better. All right, so now we're going to go back in with the lame because I can see some of the sparkles and they look like they've kind of gone across. Let's Are there any questions? Sometimes as an artist you get so like lost in thought as you're doing something. You're like, oh, I'm not talking anymore.
The newest comment was about the pipettes. They wanted to know what the suction things were that you were using. And I'm looking for those droplets that we sell, the eyedroppers.
If we had them, I think they would have been Frida ones.
Mm-hmm.
This way. Yeah, I know some of our retail stores sell some different types of things that we don't necessarily always have online. Okay, kind of like, now this is kind of where you can look and see, if you like your piece to be balanced, kind of look and see where it's weighted a little too much one way or the other. If you look up here, it's kind of a good mix. Here and here it's kind of a little heavier with the purple and the green, and then down here it's mostly pink and green. So I got multiple options. Do I want to make it balanced? I don't necessarily have to. Do I want to add some more purple down here to kind of balance that out? Do I want to do, you know, whatever. Just kind of depends on what your interest is.
Mike was asking if you can use the little flow expression bottles, the dropper bottles, instead of...
You probably can if you cut the nozzle open wide enough. Because it's, even though it's a fluid, this is a fluid medium, it's still thick. It's not really watery per se, so it's, you know, I can feel when I squeeze these and it pulls it up, there's some effort to pulling the paint up. So that's something that may be an option if it's got a customized nozzle where you can kind of make it larger. I think the biggest you'd want to use one of the larger ones, the larger sizes, because you'd be constantly refilling it otherwise. But we do have a larger one that should probably work. Just if you use a bottle like that, they'll put up a link. Cut it at an angle so that it kind of flows out more smoothly and it's not going to kind of burp or have gas, so to speak, where it's going to shoot it everywhere. If you decide to use a nozzle, that's kind of the best way to control that flow. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the one with glitter and kind of just push it in some different spots. You can really see it starting to come up, especially in some of the purple. It almost looks like how the fingers and kind of when you're looking at a brain, and a little, or kind of like a cross section of something.
We have another question
Sure.
regarding the air bubbles. A commenter had the idea of maybe the bubbles could add texture to the piece, or would the self-leveling nature of this medium kind of work against that method of adding texture?
The problem is they'll dry in and it will be a real bubble.
And you'll see the bubble.
You'll see the bubble,
So
which
it'll level off.
that doesn't. I mean, that's fine if that's, it doesn't have to be gone. If you want that to be there as a conscious decision, that's fine. However, keep in mind that people have that just kind of need to see something and they want to pop it from being kids and chasing bubbles, and they're going to see it in your work and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I just want to touch it, I want to pop that. And it's going to be there. It's just kind of human nature. So that would be the only thing that I would say is that it may, which, if that keeps somebody standing in front of your piece for longer and looking at it, it may not be the worst thing. It's just be conscientious in that it may have that effect. So, because it'll just the weight of it will get kind of stuck in that polymer medium if it doesn't pop. Or if it pops kind of at the last minute before it's completely dry, then you'll have like a pock mark, kind of a, like a mini moon crater. So that may not be something you want either. Because the rest of it will be pretty smooth. It's a polymer, and it is settling and leveling. I can actually see in coming through and kind of putting some in, it's actually starting to cure a little bit already. In dragging it through, I saw some texture grab on where it wanted to pick up, so we might be close to being done. Does anybody else have any questions? This is actually very relaxing. This would be kind of a nice, don't have the patience for yoga or something like that where it's kind of just that nice Zen kind of a thing. This has a very nice Zen application to it, but you're still being productive. This would be great for if you've got artist block. You can't do this wrong. You're not going to think it out, and be like, oh my gosh, I can't control where this color went to that color or whatever. It's just going to get you in the studio and kind of working and relaxing and having fun. And sometimes you might solve a problem of something that you had going on, or it'll make you think of something else that you might want to do, or it's definitely something where it would at least you'd be doing something creative rather than lamenting about it. So oops, and I got the edge again. I'm looking to see if I've got, looks like I've kind of caught the air bubbles as I've gone. I see very few. But you can see these are colors that didn't necessarily look like they were going to go together the best, but they're very, they actually, as it mixes and kind of comes up and through, they actually kind of go really nice together. I actually really like this green. I didn't think that I wood, but it's very gives kind of a natural look to it. Kind of as you're finishing up, go around your outside edge. Make sure that you've got your paint right to the edge. I just caught an edge that I didn't have it all the way to. If you see any overlapping, kind of try to catch it and pull it off. Mary, is there a question?
Yes.
You have that question face.
I have the question face. So, Elaine would like to know if the leftover cups can be reused, or once that mixture dries, is it useless? I'm guessing it would be.
It's gonna harden, and then it would be this kind of really neat. I mean, it's not like you couldn't adhere it to another artwork.
That's true.
Because it's acrylic, you can always use it in something mixed media, or it's going to take on the dimensions of the cup. You could even cut the cup off if it doesn't pull out of it smoothly. Heck, you could have another panel and do kind of a garbage pouring all into one thing without mixing it and just dump it straight out, so it would be kind of all the colors blending and mixing and going together.
Sculptural.
Yeah, it'd be
That would
very
be awesome.
Yeah.
And then we have Elaine asking, once this layer dries, could you go back on top and do another layer?
You definitely could. I mean, you could do up until the edge of your panel. Yeah. You know, just to make sure it's not going up and over. But yeah, there's no, you know, it's going to bond because it's acrylic. So there's no stopping it. And yeah, definitely I did like waste a lot of pouring medium doing this, but we might take the other panel since it's already opened and just try some of that dumping. Maybe we should try some dumping. What do you think?
That could be fun.
Now there's something that you could do with this. I'm not going to because this panel is really big. I've done one with a smaller panel. We actually took it, didn't finish it all the way to the edges, and picked it up and we tilted it back and forth, and it caused all these really large movements of swirls and things like that, and then just set it down and left it. And the next day we came in, it looked completely different than it did when we put it down because it leveled out and it was just really, really cool. So that's, you know, something that you could always try with something smaller. Maybe we'll show that with this other one. I'm going to slide this one very carefully off to the side. And tomorrow when we put the pictures up, you'll definitely see the lame and the sparkle in it. Is this centered pretty well right this one right here? Okay. All right.
Can you get more centered?
So, okay, I'm going to be just really gross and we're going to do the fluorescent first. And I apologize for all you people that hate fluorescent. I'm right there with you. But sometimes this is just really... I'm going to do that. And then I think I'm going to dump some of the gold into the yellow and give it a quick stir, stir, stir. Yeah, that was just the panel. That was me. Oh, I hate to say it, I really like that. Other than it's making my retina scream. Let's see, maybe we're gonna green and purple it together. That sounds awful, but you know what? Stir, stir, stir. Oh, that's really cool. That's actually pretty fun. Now I wish I had one more color. I've got the glitter, but I want to put that on last. Maybe I'll just kind of fill it out with the pink so that it's... air bubbles there. Put this green and purple down at the end. All right, now I'm going to put on a little bit of this lame, and then we're going to tilt it a little and then make it stop because it looks pretty full. All right, let's clear the runway here. All right, before we tilt, this is how black velvety this turns out. Can you see this with the camera? You can see where I thinned it a little over the other section, but I forgot to watch it to see the dry time because we got really excited and involved and off on a tangent, but you can see how dark and velvety that is against a satin sheen. So, all right. Now let's try giving this a little bit of a tilt without it running over. I think we're gonna stop there. Yeah, I'll try tilting it back a little. Okay. And I don't mind that paint that's on the apron out of the way now. All right. See, it's not really going fast enough where it's going to necessarily get away from you. It's not that liquidy. All right, and I'm just going to let that fall where it may. It looks like we've got a couple air bubbles that I'm just going to kind of pop up, put a tiny bit. And I saw another one. Where was it? Right here. I kind of finished that line. I liked that little. Okay, I'm going to squeeze the pipette and pull that back out. There we go. All right, so if you're just joining us, obviously you've missed this, but it's okay to go back and watch it again. This is Jerry's Live. You can find more information about other episodes that are going to be coming up with the keyword Jerry's Live on jerrysartarama.com. This was the Turner Acryl Gouache, our pouring project that we did just to kind of see, you know, how vibrant the colors are, how saturated they are, how much pigment's in it. You don't need a whole lot to put into this very liquidy medium to get really amazing, very bright results. Again, this is a fine art acrylic gouache that's going to give you, when you're working just with, you know, a different surface, it's going to be matte. Obviously, the pouring medium is going to give you a really nice high gloss finish. But it's really cool because you've got those options to be able to do that, but still have matte without having to add a matting agent with it. We used the DaVinci art panels. I'll show those because I forgot to show those. The DaVinci art panels come in two depths, in a 3/4 inch depth and in a 1.5 inch depth. So you've got that really nice cradle on the outside for a frameless presentation if you want. On the inside, it's got that 8-inch lip, which is the same for either size that we've been using here to pour. It's just kind of whatever your personal preference is. They're a nice raw wood. They can be stained. They can be painted. They could be oiled. You could just, you know, leave them as is. You could even paint them. It'd be really cool to paint them to match, you know, the artwork that you end up doing with them. So that's the DaVinci Pro panels, the liquid art panels. And the colors we used, you can go to jerrysartarama.com, put in the search box JL1, that's going to bring up this episode. It's going to show all the colors that we used to be able to produce these. It's going to give you the panels, the pouring medium, in case you forget, because it's easy. You don't want to have to write it down as you go along. I've gotten pouring medium all over myself, which is not uncommon, actually, as you can see. Again, this will be up. You can watch it at any time. You can leave us comments at any time. We'll be monitoring it, and we will answer back even after the broadcast is over. If you want to sign up for future episodes, the keyword is Jerry's Live on our website. That'll bring you to all the episodes. You can click and get the reminders, the RSVPs. You can put it on whichever calendar you choose to be a reminder, and you'll get an email reminder so that you don't miss out. I think the way that Katie is going to be putting these on, the most recent episode will always come to the top of the website, Katie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you'll be able to see that without having to scroll down and search through everything else. You can, I guess, do all that. So, but anyway, so the really cool thing about these, 236 colors you could do these in, which is really bad if you like to try every color. But I mean, that gives you some pretty crazy options for doing something that's just really fun, but still fine art, folks. Still fine art. So, Mary, are there any last questions at all, or are we?
No, everyone's just really excited about this project. That's the gist of it.
It's fun.
Yeah.
That's why we did it first, folks, because it's relaxing and fun. And next week, actually, we're going to learn about something really cool. That's a new painting panel. They are called AlumiComp. It's an aluminum painting panel that we carry here at jerry'sartarama.com. Also, we've got the Jerry's New York Central gessoed version of those panels. Rather than having to do the gessoing yourself, you can get them already primed. The great ability of the aluminum panel itself, just the plain panel, we've got here is this is actually one of the artworks that's been done on this. This is actually done on the smooth side. We've got a textured side and a smooth side. You can actually see in the artwork, it was brought back to that aluminum shine with little tiny tools. This is actually done in acrylic straight on the panel itself. Then with the gessoed panels, if you prefer to work on a gessoed ground, you still have that strength of an aluminum panel. Are we looking for the panels? I think they're in the storage room.
They are
in there. So I mean, that's fine. We've got an artwork for now. There's photos on the website at the Jerry's Live.
Mm-hmm.
There are photos of what those look like. And you can always go to the class listing if you're just dying to see what they look like ahead of time. And it will be JL2, right? Will
yes,
be the keyword.
JL2.
So, and you can click on the items and that'll pull up the AlumiComp photos and other artworks that are on that, so you can kind of get a sneak peek ahead of time to see what those panels look like, and some artwork that was done on those. And with those, we'll learn about the panels and about their great strength and integrity and just the different things that it gives you the ability to do. And we'll actually, we'll do, yes, this is a small one. This is the smooth side. Then we've got this side that actually an image transfer was done on. So that's the textured side that someone did an acrylic image transfer on. So we will try to do a demo, I think, where we're going to feature the smooth side with maybe a direct oil painting. And then we'll have examples definitely of the gessoed surfaces and the tone grounds in the gessoed surfaces. And then I think we'll probably try just do a quick study with those as well. So, so anyway, that's all there at the keyword Jerry's Live. Go to that and sign up and see what's coming up ahead. And this was our first episode. Please definitely join us for our second one. On behalf of Katie and Mary, my crew, and Amy and Pierre here, I think he's got a beret on, so I'm going with Pierre today.
He's here today.
We appreciate you tuning in to see us with the Turner. I put Turner and tuning in together. I have had a fever, so keep that in mind. But thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And join us next week, please. Thanks.